Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Storytelling is the most ancient channel of human compassion. And in these days, that feels more true now than ever. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, actors, filmmakers, producers, what have you, some journalists, and we talk about, current events. We talk about state of the business. We talk about current projects, how they got started, anything else we can think of in a light and conversational fashion, because that's how we do it over here. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, and God knows we would love it if you did, because you're listening, so we got you that far. But you could do that over at Spotify, over at Apple, and you can find every single one of our episodes archived over at our YouTube channel. Also, it would be lovely if you could follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and as I always say, probably most importantly, please visit us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, where our hardworking team is cracking away on movie news, reviews, lists, and all sorts of recommendations on what to watch out there in a world where it's getting more complicated than ever to know what to watch. And I know our team would love some eyeballs on the content, and we think you would too. But I guess that leads into this upcoming episode where we always try to mix it up a little and talk to some interesting people. And I think we got one here, because on this episode we talk with an award-winning Canadian-Ukrainian filmmaker by the name of Alina Vita Kulesh. If I mispronounced that, I apologize profusely. She is a working director. She is a short filmmaker. And you can see her most recent short film, which just debuted up on the CBC Gem streaming platform, called Little Soul. It's a lovely little film, which I do recommend you check out. And we talked with Alina just about sort of her work, how she got started, how she got into the business, sort of the challenges therein, and also get down to sort of the core of the importance of story and having the venue to tell these kind of things, and how important it is for artists and creators out there to have different venues for people to be able to experience and take a look at their art, like CBC Gem, which is showing some amazing and really interesting selection of short films, depending on what they have. But I do recommend you go to the CBC Gem app and check that out. And I also recommend you stick right here and listen to our talk with Alina, because I think she really gives some great insight onto sort of the hard work and the process that really gets involved in this business and in storytelling, and just, the upward climb it is to sort of follow your dreams and allow yourself to sort of enjoy life and be one of those kinds of people that I think we all aspire to be. And I hope you enjoy our talk, because I certainly know that I did.
Oh my God, thank you for the time today. What is time anyways?
At this stage, I question that every day.
I hear you. We can talk about that more if you like.
Sure. But I mean, I guess my first question, obviously, again, just officially, thank you again for coming on. This was, I really do appreciate the time. And I was so struck by your short, which just came on to CBC Gem a little while ago, Little Soul. And it really is one of those little stories that it feels like sort of that emotional reminder that we all need, especially kind of these days. And I'm kind of curious, what was sort of the, I guess, impetus or sort of inspiration for this story?
It's never just one thing. It all just kind of builds and builds until you have to write it. But I remember, there was a time several years after graduating from university, entering the real world. I just kind of took an audit of what I was seeing in myself and in the people around me. and the narratives that we started playing in our heads, and the consensus was that joy was not commonly allowed. And it was just one of those things where, like, becoming an adult meant you have to work hard, long hours, and there's really little time to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And that could mean, you can't pursue your passion because it's not going to make you enough money, or you can't have the birthday cupcake because it's wasted calories. And it really started to affect me. And I decided to really reflect on that in Little Soul.
Okay. And I mean, it's one of those things where it's a very universal thing, because we all have those self doubts and we all have those moments. And I mean, and this is something I'm always curious about. I'm going to ramble for a bit, so bear with me.
Go for it.
It's one of those, like, when people come out of film school or they'll come out of university, like, people on the outside looking in never really have a clear sense of a career path when someone wants to direct or be a storyteller. And
100%.
I'm kind of curious because, like, how did you ultimately sort of get into starting it? Because I mean, on one end, you can do short films, you can play the festival run, but sort of getting the financing to do a feature isn't as easy as it sounds. It's very hard, quite frankly. But there are so many other avenues for people to be working directors, be it music videos, short films, web series, and I mean, especially these days, given, the influx of streaming services, there is a sort of demand for any and all sorts of kind of content. And I'm just kind of curious if you can walk me through not just how you got started, but how sort of the myriad of, I guess,
Like,
options out there for
yep.
storytelling are out there, and yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what I want to ask.
You're like, basically tell me everything. Okay. So, I never thought I could be a writer, first and foremost. This is how I entered film. I never really thought that my voice was important enough, which I know sounds terribly sad, but it is the truth. And the more I started working predominantly in advertising, the more I started to realize how second nature storytelling was to me. And also through, just growing up and therapy and allowing myself to find joy, I realized that I do have a voice, and I do have a very deep desire to connect with people and make them feel like they're seen. And that really has just catapulted everything. And it's sort of, the thing that it keeps me going when the rejection letters are pouring in, which there are a lot of. And then, from there, it's really about connecting with your potential audience and explaining why you want to make something. And I think with Little Soul, half of it was funded through Indiegogo. And I was just so humbled by the response and the generosity of the community and my network and my friends. Because, it is a story that everyone can relate to. We've all silenced ourselves at some point, or doubted ourselves, or, restricted ourselves in a way that didn't really feel true to ourselves. So I feel like people, wanted to see it happen because it was such a personal yet universal story. And so I think when you're getting something funded, the most important question to answer is why this story. And why now? When I wrote Little Soul in 2017, we weren't talking about mental health or healing or really anything of that nature the way that we are now, partly because of the pandemic. That's really pushed us to open up and be more vulnerable. But, it was kind of, I'm glad that it didn't happen in 2017. It took 3 years to make this. So, everything has its time, and I feel like it really resonated with people.
Well, no, and I mean you're absolutely right, and I mean it goes to the old saying, especially in sort of the entertainment business, as it were,
Hmm.
that you're going to get 1,000 no's, but you only need one yes. And
Yes,
but at the same time, it's important to be able to say yes to yourself, which is something that
totally.
we so easily forget.
Oh my God, it's so easy to say no to yourself. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Why is it that we always want to help other people, or we know how to comfort our friends, our family members, but self-compassion is so difficult? I think about this all the time because, I am my worst critic, as are many other people out there. And if a friend calls me and they're, in need of, advice or just someone who would listen to them, I'm right there. But why is it so difficult to allow yourself that same level of kindness? I think that's kind of a work in progress for the rest of our lives, perhaps. I don't think someone gets it right all the time, but that's definitely something I would love to see more of for everyone.
And just to go down this rabbit hole a little bit, I mean, I love that you say that because I mean, I feel like I'm my own worst critic, and I mean,
Mhm.
I feel like I can talk to so many different people in the entertainment industry who will be putting themselves out there as storytellers, as actors, as whatnot, and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm my own worst critic. I can't stand looking at myself, yada yada yada." And I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, why do you think, especially in terms of storytelling and sort of being an actor and that kind of thing, like, why do you think there is that inherent self doubt with these people who are really putting themselves forward so very much at the same time?
I think, ego plays a huge part in it. And when we think of ego, we can think a lot of like greatness, this overblown idea of like, we're so great. But in truth, ego actually loves to play the victim, and the ego loves to play down. Um, so I feel like, the true part of ourselves wants to act or direct or to write or, to connect with people or to create story worlds through production design. But it's the ego that is consistently saying, well, are you even good enough? You know, and that's when you really have to say, well, it doesn't really matter if I'm good enough right now. What matters is that I really want to explore this. And I mean, we get better as we go. And if you stick with something long enough, you'll be good at it. But I think, again, it comes back to what is that desire for you to create the thing that you want to create? What's behind there?
And I mean, it really does go back to even what we were saying before, just about time and the perception of time that, like it's the hard work is doing the exploration and putting in the time
Yes.
and sort of exploring the ideas that you want to do. The thing that takes the less amount of time is just going to yourself, well, I suck. I can't do this.
Yes, it's so easy to quit, isn't it? Because then nothing changes, right? Like if you don't write that thing or audition for the thing, your life stays the same. That's so easy to be in. But if you write the thing and then put it out there, and finally, your family members and friends who are wondering why you're always missing in action have something to see and to react to, like that is life changing, and it is very scary.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think this goes to something, well, I've read on your press release, that just the line that you had about storytelling being the most ancient channel for human compassion. And I mean, that really feels so true these days because when it really boils down to it, I mean, the one thing I think that people out there are looking in the world, be it to consume media or to find other people or to connect or do whatever, it's about getting to know other people. It's about really having sort of
Mm.
stories that are so universal that we think are unique to us, but really they're universal that we can all relate to. And to see those things projected onto the screen is really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel like I hear this idea all the time. And, anytime you hear someone successful in the industry talk about their craft, it's like the more personal the idea, the more universal it is. And I think that's just so poetic in the sense that we are all one. we all have the fears, we all have the doubts, we all want to be loved, we all want to be seen. And that's why I think also, diversity on screen and behind the screen is so important, because if people are not seeing themselves in the stories, that's actually hindering everyone.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it leads into something else. I'd like to ask this of everybody that I get to talk to, because especially when it comes to film, I find that we're fans first
Yes.
before we get into it. And I'm kind of curious, like for you thinking back, was there a moment in your life or even like a movie or a piece of art or something where it's like, you know what, I this is what I want to do?
Mm. You know, I do definitely remember realizing how cool movies are, when I must have been around like 6 years old, and my parents took me to, I believe it was the Terminator, um, back in Crimea, which I know you're not technically supposed to do, but I feel like they were like, she's not going to watch this anyways. And they were right. In that I didn't really watch the movie. What I remember still, the visual, is that I remember looking back, we were in one of the front rows,
Right.
and everybody had the same facial expression, and this white light from the screen was shining on their faces, and they were all turned towards this big screen, and you could just feel them so invested. I see that visual quite frequently in my mind, and I think, that was a very like, whoa, this is a powerful thing, moment. But like I said, I studied film in school, at Queen's University. I remember taking one script writing course and loving it, but again, not really allowing myself to understand that I could really do it, or that I could even, I deserve to explore it. So that moment, I can't even pinpoint it, because it was just this I don't know, this thing that grew until finally, through a lot of self-reflection, I was like, you know what, enough is enough. Like, what is it that you really want to do? And I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but this film thing is it. And then you commit to it, and then you recommit to it and recommit to it. And I feel like you have to commit to it almost monthly, because it is so hard and it kicks your ass.
Yeah.
And I don't think that ever really gets easier. I don't have the answers. I'm talking as if I have the answers to how to deal with rejection. I really don't. Ask any of my friends, who get endless text messages from me, being like, I don't know if I can do this. And they're like, Alina, remember this. So, I think it is like a commitment, and then a recommitment and a reassessment, as well. It's like, how is it going? Where am I going? What do I have to stop resisting? What do I have to lean into? Yeah, it's a lifelong commitment.
And I love that answer, because I mean, there is a purity to sort of like you say, that power of like looking behind you in a full theater and
Mm-hmm.
seeing the reaction and having something that is holding the attention of a room like that is really one of those things that I almost think gets taken for granted when it comes to sort of the power of filmmaking and the power of cinema, because
Yes.
it really is this sort of magical pure thing that the filmmaker is getting their message across and the people are transfixed. They're not breaking
Mm-hmm.
away. They're totally invested in what you have to say. And that has a genuine power that can be like, it's alluring, but
Mm-hmm.
it's difficult to attain. It can kick you back down the mountain more than once, but it's definitely a beautiful thing to try to attain for.
Yeah, and I think, people might be saying like, when people watch movies now at home, they don't fully pay attention because of the little screen in front of us.
Right.
We're always texting or tweeting. But I would have to say that actually people are paying attention, because they want to talk about it, whether that's in real time, or they rewind and they're like, wait a second, I think I missed this really important part. So they end up rewatching the thing that they might have missed. So I do think that people are still paying attention. I miss going to the theater so much and
Me
watching
too, yeah.
movies. Oh my God, right? Like, I just can't wait to sit in the dark room with a bunch of strangers and eating popcorn. I just can't. I will hold on to that desire. It's what's getting me through. But yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty wild and magical thing.
For you, like going forward, I'm just kind of curious because, like, where do you see yourself going? Like, in terms of like projects that you want to work on and things that you
Mm-hmm.
want to do? Because, I mean, obviously you can do music videos, you can do shorts and run the festival circuit, but at the same time, is there a sort of, I guess, like, I don't want to say dream project because that sounds kind of hokey, but is
They're all dream projects,
sort of,
Dave.
well, yeah, but that, you know what? That's the right answer, though. You're absolutely right.
It's I try not to think so far ahead, and I just try to focus on the thing that I'm writing or loving right now or developing. I would love to make a feature. That's definitely kind of one of the next steps. I'm writing something that is inspired by my growing up in Scarborough. I have a great producer on there. Her name is Bonnie Ho. So I'm really excited about that. But I think in the overarching idea of my work, there's a surrealist kind of magical element in both Baby Blue and in Little Soul.
Hmm.
And I'm really interested in seeing if I can continue to explore that, but also have my future work be even more grounded in reality. And in a lot of 60s, 70s Soviet cinema that I grew up watching, there's always that bit of playfulness, that bit of wit and magic. And I'm wondering if that's kind of where it's from. I'm also a huge like science fiction magic nerd. That could be feeding that as well. But there's definitely, I think, room to see more surrealist exploration that's blended with really grounded storytelling, I think.
So are you our Canadian Tartovsky? Is that sort of that's going?
Oh Lord, that's a big ask. Let me just make my first feature and then we can talk about it again.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love how you say talk about just focusing on the moment, because I mean, especially from an artistic standpoint, I think that's probably the most important thing, to be able to rise above the noise that's out there in the media landscape. Because I mean, obviously you're making stuff and you're putting your heart and soul into it, but there's a lot of other people making stuff and putting
Oh my
their heart
God,
and soul
so
into it.
many. And they're so talented. And they're probably more talented than you, which is very humbling. But you have to ultimately believe that there is room for everyone, because there is, especially now, so many different platforms, different ways of getting your content seen. We have to believe that there's room for everyone, because there is room for everyone. And again, it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Why do you want to tell this story, right?
Yeah.
And that's just really the thing. The only thing you can do is, and it's so easy to get, wrapped up in the industry and who's getting what grants and, all of that jazz. So easy. But ultimately, like, bringing it back to yourself, because that's the only thing that you can really control, is kind of like the key to the mental health of the film industry. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very emotional process. And like I said, the rejections come in all the time. The more you apply to things, the more rejected you'll be. And you just have to kind of learn how to make peace with it, and send more more applications for more rejections.
Well, and a lot of that also goes to the ego too, because I mean, I think it
Mhm.
really does speak to an important part that, and I mean, especially these days when it comes to filmmakers and storytellers, I mean, I hate this example, but it's kind of true. I mean, back in the day, people would sort of look at the way a Quentin Tarantino came up and just like
Hmm.
go the video store route. But
Right.
it almost seemed like there was a bit of a period where people wouldn't necessarily even go as deep as he did. And they would just go want to watch the Tarantino movies and then go, oh, I know everything about filmmaking. It's like, no, you don't.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
knows everything about filmmaking.
Nobody
Unless
does.
you're like Scorsese, maybe that's about it, but nobody
Yeah.
knows everything. And this business really is based on everyone evolving as they go.
Yeah. And I mean, how dull would it be if we had the formula?
Yeah, exactly.
And it always is interesting to me when I see like an article about artificial intelligence writing scripts.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting and funny because who is going to ensure the script has heart? And how does the AI system know when the heart breaks and how it feels? You know, it's ultimately people, writers, who are going to be feeding it. Um, I digress, but I think I don't even remember what your question is because now I'm so rattled by AI writing screenplays. Yeah, what a concept.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it was a question. I think it was just more just a statement on the fact of, how commodified the entertainment industry is trying to go, but at the same time, it can't go that way. It has to go the other way in order to keep up with sort of the demand for content.
Yeah, and again, there's a demand, but at the same time, it also feels kind of still really hard to get in, you know,
No, for
which
sure.
is a whole other podcast. But I think for me right now, it's really about trying to figure out how to work in the system, but not depend on it.
Mm.
You know, with Little Soul, it didn't get any funding from, government grants or anything like that. But it did get support from CBC because the producers at Wildling Pictures really believed in the story and they brought it forward to them. So I'm really grateful for that. But if I had waited, and kept applying for grants, I'm not really sure I would have been able to make it. Um, so I do feel like, and I'm still trying to figure this out, it's like, how do you stay in the industry and in the system, have it work to your advantage, but also not depend on it to be a filmmaker? That's the kind of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's a balance of knowing how to work it, but also just knowing how to get stuff done at the same time. Because I'm sure you
Yes.
can dance around ideas forever, but if you don't just pull up your bootstraps and go out and do it, it won't happen.
Yeah. And sometimes people ask me like, what do you need to do to get into the industry or something like that? And I don't really have an answer for that, but I do think that filmmaking is like the most collaborative art form,
Yeah.
right? And so much of it is around the people that and the people that are linking up to your vision or you're linking up to theirs. And you really have to make sure that it's not about the network, it's about the relationships.
Mm.
Especially being a director, like, I think I have a vision. I think I'm a good leader. I love working with people. But ultimately, the most talented people on set are, the keys and people who know their craft.
Right. Yeah.
So I just it's just really about honoring them and making sure that, they are also heard in your stories. And yeah, it's just fostering that connection that goes deeper than a network. I just hate that word so much. Um, and just taking interest in people's work and what they want to do. And, yeah, it's no person is an island is so true for the film industry because you cannot do it alone.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it does require all of that, and I mean, it really does. I mean, especially from my perspective, I mean, the way I look at it, Everything you just said, absolutely true. But I think like it ultimately boils down to sort of the key idea of just don't stop. You will get
Yes.
rejected. You will get told no. Just don't stop.
Yeah. And I feel like, again, if you listen to, anyone that's right now rocking Hollywood, it's like the people who make it are the ones that don't stop. You're so right. It's really hard not to stop, though, sometimes when you're constantly being kicked in the heart. But you're allowed to take breaks, right?
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I think that's what makes Little Soul so beautiful, because I mean it almost feels like that's the moment of a break
Yes.
where you're just getting that moment to just let it sit and then sort of reinvest in yourself, then get back out there.
And sometimes it takes for everything to fall apart, like, and to reject you, and for you to have to start again.
Yeah. I think that's a good note to end on, because I mean that really kind of does sum up the entertainment industry. At some point it will all crumble around your ankles and you just have to pick up the pieces and rebuild it and try again.
Yep.
But you know what? This was an absolute delight, and I just want to say thank you
Thank
so much for the
you.
time and congratulations on the short on Gem. And I can't
Thanks
wait for
so
the
much.
next one.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.